please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, consideration of the agenda. Any comments, corrections, additions, subtractions from anyone? Seeing none. Conflicts of interest for the commission? Nope. Shaking heads, seeing none. Moving on. Meeting minutes from April 2026. Our prior, most recent meeting. I didn't see any.
Just calling us a board. It was the only thing I saw. So other than that, no.
We are a commission, not a board. Anyone else? We have a motion to, motion for approval as presented.
Do we want to make it, change it from board to commission?
And then what board it is.
Well, I think it makes sense if we could just make a motion to approve the minutes as amended by substituting the word board for commission wherever through the document.
Okay. It was only, anyway. Yes.
So I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Adopted as described. Next up is public comment on agenda items only, please. If you have the,
Nothing?
we don't have any comment slips? No. Okay. Hearing none. Madam Secretary, do we have any correspondence?
None that I'm aware of.
All right, thank you. Moving on. We got there too fast. It looks like he just stepped out. Okay, we can get started. So I don't know if this is unfinished or new business continuation of the application for 3910 South, or US 31 South for restaurant hotel. It is a site plan review. We have received updated site plan. Sarah, we received your staff report regarding the updated plan.
Yeah, so the applicants here can do a presentation, but briefly, you had an updated plan. It's closer to what you discussed or asked for at your last meeting to get to exactly what he was looking to do. The live work units are no longer on here. It just has the restaurant, 12-seat restaurant, which had the health department review at the last meeting, and then it's got the 3 hotel units on it. A couple of items that are also changed on here that you'll see is there's an additional dumpster details, and that's on the north side of the building. It's noted on the floor plan because I missed it the first time. I didn't think it was on there. So it's not on the site plan itself, but you can see it on the proposed lodge improvements, that floor plan. It's on the kind of the north side and red lighting where those are red letters where that's going to be. Adjacent to the building, like the rolling totes like you have at home for that. That second entrance hasn't been removed from this plan. There's a letter on your desk. The applicant can explain it a little bit more as far as their conversation with MDOT and fire. Fire had signed off on it with the 2 entrances and then was going to adjust after the last meeting. But I don't have anything revised based on this plan from fire on that. And then I'd asked for something from MDOT. The applicant provided this letter instead of a letter from MDOT for that. There's no additional landscaping on here. The ordinance does allow for basically an exception from the landscaping if there's no exterior work to be done, if it's basically a change of use with that. So at the time I talked about it with the engineer, there wasn't any additional work. I want to go back. The deck information was not on the plans initially when I had it, and so those were added later. And I just want to double check that that's not an improvement that would cause landscaping to be required for that. It has some existing decks, but there are some new decks that are proposed as a part of this plan as well. And then an item that just recently came up was, just recently to me came up is an older thing, is that front porch for the front door. That roof was added. There were no permits pulled for it. There's a violation letter that was never basically resolved for that. So I'm asking for the planning commission basically to resolve that prior to them getting into the building there. That is an item, it's in the front setback because that whole front of the building is in the front setback. So it's going to need a variance from the zoning board of appeals. It's not something that the planning commission can grant, but you can make it a condition of your approval if you go through and approve that tonight.
Okay. Would you like to add on, tell us more?
Good evening. As you're probably all aware, my name's Charles Lockery. I am proposing, as Sarah mentioned, the 3 boutique hotel rooms on the backside of the existing building, formerly known as Peterson's Restaurant, and opening the restaurant portion as still the primary use as a 12-seat deli type restaurant. As Sarah indicated, the decks were added to this plan because when I was talking to Sarah, she asked about any deck works that were there. We, for simplification reasons, just kept them off the plan originally. She asked where the existing ones were and if we were planning on doing any additional decks. So the decks that are shown in red are the proposed decks, which we don't have to do right now if it gets into a situation where it kind of creates a exterior construction aspect. As Sarah was talking about with the driveway as well, I talked to MDOT and they are still in a position where they'd like that driveway removed. And I indicated to them prior, and we discussed it, I don't have an issue with that, but I didn't want it to be like a catch-22. If I remove that, then it creates construction on the outside of the building, and then it opens another can of worms that we're not here to, necessarily talk about tonight. So as I've expressed before, my main goal would be to get land use approval so I can get my construction permits so I can modify and remodel those 3 hotel rooms on the inside so I can try to get some rental income and keep the whole project underway. And so my focus would be on the 3 rentals and then segue immediately into the 12-seat restaurant. And then while that is going on, my engineer is also working on the full site plan to, present that with the live work units, removing the driveway, doing the landscaping, additional, septic work as required by the health department, things like that. So as Sarah indicated, we added the coach lights, we added the sign detail, We added the trash containers on the north side of the building, details about the decks, and the enclosure around it, clarified on the floor plan with the 12-seat restaurant, the 3 units, and the site plan that you can see in the upper part of the plan shows the existing parking lot layout and the existing septic layout, and everything on the outside of the building remains unchanged. So I just wanted to start out by, again, reiterating about getting a land use permit to do these by right, uses, and the hotel room and the restaurant. So I'm open for questions or further explanations.
I'll start quickly. So you mentioned MDOT. We're missing approvals for Health Department, MDOT, Soil Erosion, and Fire Department.
Well, fire department, talked to Kevin, and as he explained, and I explained last meeting, he's okay either way. He'd prefer the 2 entrances. He would prefer it, but he was going to rescind his desire to have 2 entrances if MDOT was really pushing to close 1 entrance. But at this point, it shouldn't be about the 2 entrances because there's no extra work going on the exterior of the building. And the primary use of the building is 60% restaurant, which was the original use. And we have an accessory use of 40% for the hotel units. So for that reason, I discussed it with my engineer, and instead of, MDOT writing a letter, which they, it's explained in that letter. They didn't feel comfortable doing it this time, but they still would like that driveway removed, which I don't have an issue with. So that's why I provided the letter to.
And based on your engineer's representation here, they would prefer to make any changes when you do a larger project anyway. They're just looking at this as a continuation of the current.
Right. Or if MDOT wanted to have it removed right now, I mean, they could remove it, or, if it came, if that was the only thing holding it up, I don't want it to be, a deal killer.
I don't think so. And Health Department, you've been in contact with, you just mentioned something about septic.
Yeah, and that's the reason for the 12-seat restaurant right now. Well, one of the reasons. One is because I didn't want to open a full-fledged restaurant at this point. But the existing field has capacity for 12 seats, as well as the 3 hotel units as they sit. So using the existing septic tank and the pump vault and the forced main and the absorption field, which is on this side of US 31, that would suffice for the building as is. Moving forward with a larger restaurant and of course the live work units, that would have to be modified and increased in size, and that's a whole different ballgame. So we would do amendments to the plan, when that time came.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the math here on the plan for your septic field, right?
But we haven't heard anything officially back from the health department. I'm sure they're very busy, but in the time frame, we were working on it. And Sarah and I both received the letter from Kevin Lane, the fire chief, about him rescinding his desire to have both driveways open. So he would,
For the time being, it sounds like that's not an issue.
Right.
I think it's also noted from our ordinance that motels require certain services, maid service, et cetera. That's understood. That'll be any.
That's going to be me initially. And I mean, obviously with some hired help
Yeah, just as long as it's understood, that's part of it.
Yep, I'm aware of that.
The sign, I don't mean to run over everybody. I just have a list of questions here. Please jump in. The sign, it appears you're just going to reface what's there.
Correct. The upper part of the sign, just take the Petersons out and put the new sign in.
Okay, so I don't think we need any additional approval on that.
All right,
That's my understanding. Sorry, Denise, did you?
Could you go back to the decks and explain? You said something, I want to make sure I understand. If it means that you're kind of halfway between whether you're going to modify the decks, or tell me, explain that a little bit more.
Sure. On the original site plan that was originally submitted from the architect before the engineer got involved, these were the proposed end solution for the decks for each unit. The last meeting, they were removed, all the decks were removed from the plan because we were focusing on, just modifying and remodeling the inside. Sarah mentioned that she wanted to know what was going on with the decks, and we could add them as part of this use permit. So the decks in the dark gray color are existing, and the red is what we're proposing and what we proposed initially. But if that means, getting into that catch-22 of if we do any work on the outside, then it would trigger, some other work, then we would forego the deck additions for right now and then make that part of, a subsequent plan.
Mm-hmm.
But we kind of felt that it was easier to put it on the use permit and just have it part of the modification or the remodeling of the units.
Are the current decks safe for use, or
Pardon me?
are the current decks that are there safe for use? I mean, could somebody step out on them, or?
I wouldn't say they're up to code. But I would want to check them out. And the deck boards are worn and old. And so I would modify those. I would want to modify those anyway. So it would make more sense to either remove the deck boards, enhance the structure, enlarge them a little bit, restructure them a little bit, reconfigure them, I should say, and just make them part of the remodel.
I think you can do that within, it meets the setbacks, it's within the,
Well, but Sarah was saying you needed to check to
Yeah.
make sure, and I would want to make sure that was all
because it
done.
might trigger landscaping because of
Right.
exterior improvements.
Yeah, the landscaping applicability part talks about anything that requires a site plan, requires a landscape plan, additions to commercial that increase the floor area by 25%, and then some change to non-conforming landscaping. And then the exceptions are a reconstruction, if it's destroyed by weather or something, interior remodel or facade improvements that do not result in an increase in size of the structure, parking facilities, or paved areas. And then any use, building, or structure for which only a change of use is requested, and which requires no exterior structural or site modifications that increase its volume or scale.
Those all sound like they're saying physical volume and suggests inside of walls, which the decks are not inside of walls. So I guess the decks, is that part of expanding the scale of it? Is that what we're saying?
You said external. Where?
This is in section 5.2.2 of the ordinance.
Because a deck is part of the structure, correct?
Right, I mean, the ordinance would call a deck a structure. And I mean, I think you're looking at that number 3. Does it still meet the exception to not doing landscaping if they add on to the deck, enlarge the decks for that?
And the landscaping plan would be for the whole,
For the whole property. So the landscaping that you saw last time, that's not on here, is the road right-of-way landscaping and the foundation landscaping around the building. So they're proposing to just leave landscaping as it currently exists, which is on the plan. That's what's shown on here is as it currently exists.
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily just be around the decks. It would be the whole.
Right,
the whole
yeah,
site,
if they had to
yeah.
comply, they'd have to put in that road right-of-way in the, around the building.
So are the decks part of the structure? Because if they are, then technically we should have them penciled in on the site plan, which would change the setbacks because this property lies in a manner that the building is not straight with the lot lines. Therefore, if the deck is the structure and the deck goes on now, we're getting closer to the setbacks. I'm not saying it doesn't meet it still, but there's no dimensions on said plan to know how big the decks are to even scale it out on the actual site plan to see what the side yard setback becomes on the north side and so on and so forth. Because we then are moving the building in essence larger
Yeah.
and closer to other
I had the same thought you did, and in the small corner here, right, you're getting close to the 10-foot.
right. And I'm not saying it's over it. I don't believe
No, I
it's
know, we
over
just
it,
don't,
but
we don't have the map.
No, it's not over because it doesn't even break the plane of the north side of the building. But,
it doesn't break the plane, but when you continue that on,
right, but you could look at the site plan and, you know, going out from the building, you know, the 8 feet, it's going to be well.
it's still going to be inside of it. I'm
Right.
just saying it does change how we word it is in terms of acceptance.
Well, and there's no dimensioning on this plan, so we didn't know it was 8 feet until you just said it right there, because it, you know, unless you're scaling this for that. My initial reaction is that adding the decks to this would kick it out of the exception, so that number 3, where it says any structure where a change of use is requested and no required external or exterior structural or site modifications that increase volume or scale. I mean, adding the decks increase the volume, and that's my initial read on it, unless the planning commission has some strong argument otherwise for that. But that in combination with your concern about it's not on the site plan, I'm, you know, I don't know if you're willing to pull them off because you've already mentioned you don't
why
want to
would
get
you,
bogged
why
down.
would you have me put them on? You're the one that requested that.
Well,
put
when
'em on.
when I talked to your engineer, I said there was talk about decks being added at the last meeting. Is that being done or not? There's no decks on this drawing. Even the existing decks weren't on there. So I was just saying, if you're doing them, they need to be on the plan.
Well, yeah, but, so we put them on the plan, but now it's created, you know, other difficulties, just like, you know, the south entrance and things like that. So I don't, you know, when you asked me to do it, you didn't follow through on everything that would be created, you know, by that. So if you would have said, yeah, add the decks, add dimensions, you know, kind of continue through the whole process, then there wouldn't be anything in.
Well, I
Right,
asked
dispute.
if they were going to be added or not. I didn't say put them on. I said,
Yeah,
if you
you-
want to do them, they need
When
to
you
be
and I
on there.
talked, when you and I talked, you said, yeah, might as well put them on the plan. That way we can get them all approved at one time.
Right. If you want to build them, they need to be on the plan.
Well, they're on the
So-
plan, but there seems to always be something needed, something, a dimension here or this, or, you know, and it's just, it's like trying to hit a moving target. It's really difficult.
Once again, it's all written down, and there's a book right over here. We'll send one home with you if you like. It's all in the ordinance. We're just following down the line. And, you know, I would think your engineer and an architect would have read that as well and be aware of what,
Well, and that's what, he's the one that had brought it up, because I called the engineer, I said, there's no landscaping on here, and he said, well, what about this section where we don't have to do it? And I said, well, let me look at it. And that was the previous plan before the decks were added, and I go, okay, yeah, you don't need landscaping, you're right, because you're not doing any exterior changes.
yeah. And now we're potentially doing exterior changes.
Right.
I mean, this doesn't have to stop the whole project at this point. We could,
Yeah, like I said, I was.
no, that we're not trying to make a, you know, we're trying to follow the rules, I guess.
Right, but I'm trying to, you know, I have limited conversations with Sarah, and I'm trying to, I'm trying to provide her with all the information so she can provide it to you. And,
So just so that I can be clear, so the decks, having a decks on here expands the footprint. I would argue that it doesn't necessarily expand the volume, because the volume, I guess it depends on how you define volume. I interpret volume as what's enclosed in the four walls or whatever walls it is, but it still expands the structural footprint of it. So because of that, it now potentially eliminates the use of the exception where he wouldn't have to provide, the applicant would not have to provide a landscape plan, correct?
Right.
Okay, so if the decks weren't on here, based on everything else that we see, it wouldn't need a landscape plan, but because the decks potentially would need a landscape plan. So if for the decks were removed, for argument, we could proceed forward with everything else. And then we could evaluate it and potentially consider approval without the decks. And then once it's approved, if the applicant were to come back with the decks, the same decks drawn on the picture, with landscaping around it, what type of a permitting process would that be? Would that be fall under the planning commission as a site plan review, or is it more like, you know, I'm just trying to find out what does that look like?
It may be administrative, depending on the size of them.
From the looks of it, the decks fit within the envelope, right? There's no variance needed,
no,
but it would require, because it's exterior, it would require landscaping.
Right, I think what my initial reaction is, it's probably administrative, but it would still require landscaping. So you wouldn't see it again to get the decks approved, but for him to build the deck, that, I don't think that's gonna get out of the landscaping. But I'd have to read through the landscaping section again to see where that catches.
Does the landscaping section then have to come back to us?
Let me look.
Or is it something that we can word into the motion, like, so we're
Right.
not holding up Mr. Lockery anymore, that we,
Yeah.
you know, would say something like, we approve it tonight without the decks, and we authorize the zoning administrator if the landscape permit or plan.
So long as it follows the ordinance and.
Correct.
Blah, 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 blah.
That way it would help speed things up for the applicant, not have to wait a whole nother 30 days to come back here potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could condition it. It doesn't look like to me that the landscaping in and of itself is required to come back to the planning commission, kind of at first look. And just for general comment is that this landscaping portion is new to our zoning ordinance in the last year or two, and we haven't had anybody go through this process. So that's why every time we look at it, or what the question is, we don't know this, or I don't know it off the top of my head because we just don't apply it frequently. But it doesn't look like it would require a trip to the planning commission to deal with the landscaping. So if you wanted to condition the approval that, you know, no decks at this time, but the applicant can, you know, go through the process for decks and landscaping in the future.
Amend the site plan in the future,
Right.
and then, so long as it
Yep.
was within the ordinance, it would not need. further
and I'm
review.
okay coming back and discussing that.
Which would be probably included in the next version, the next.
Right.
I was going to say
We're gonna
alternatively,
come back anyway for the.
even if worst case concluded, it did have to come back to the planning commission, it could come back 30 days later, but it's just focused on that piece, and he could advance his construction on other aspects.
Right. And the replacement of like the top deck boards and railings and stuff, that we don't do permitting for those as long as it doesn't get into, you know, your stringers, foundations, that work. And even then, you wouldn't be increasing size and volume, so, or if you wanted to replace the existing deck as is fully even, you're not increasing anything.
Replace what's there,
Replace like for like, there,
Yes.
size-wise.
right?
Is there a ZBA appeal for the front entrance?
Not yet.
Okay, so well, we want to go there too, but, so on the decks, if we're moving forward, what we're saying is we would ignore those on the site plan. And then if you and your engineer and architect have an argument why we don't need to review, or you don't need landscaping under the ordinance.
Yeah,
But you can always put that back on and come back with your
we're
decks
just
and your
trying to
landscape.
keep it super simple.
Understood,
So, for
We're-
everybody's sake.
yeah.
And
But
then-
that will be, if there's an approval, if there's a motion for approval, that will be a condition to the approval, that the decks are not approved. And it will be subject to further review, including the landscaping as required by the ordinance. Okay? I just want to make sure we're clear. I don't want to have
Yeah,
a
no,
debate
that's,
later.
that's.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
I've kind of taken a run at a.
okay, perfect. I was just trying to make sure we're keeping track of where we are here. Okay, do you want to talk about the front porch?
Well, that was what I was just going to put as a condition of the approval.
Yeah.
If that gets resolved and we all agree on my motion, then it would not need him to come back
Right,
for a full site review
yeah,
as a condition of the permit.
right,
That's how I looked at it.
yeah.
So that if he had to go to ZBA and that was next month and then he's got to wait for us, and I'm trying to forego.
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I don't think there's any, it's just a condition. It either has to be permitted, you either have to, a variance or remove it.
Correct, right.
Right.
Yeah, it
But I
shouldn't,
don't want to hold up the rest. I
it
just,
should, right, it shouldn't affect tonight, right?
Right.
Yeah. And that is it 3 feet, did I read?
Yes.
It extends out 3 feet?
Yeah, 3 feet, just so when you're unlocking the door or.
Yeah,
something you're going,
understood.
It's for
Yeah.
ice, rain, and snow.
Just happens that your building's already in the setback, so.
Well, yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a non-conforming building to begin with.
Okay, lighting. Did I see, it's just these, the building lighting is the, what do you call them?
downward facing.
Coach lights
Yep.
by the doors? is that-
Correct.
And that's the only,
Right, downward facing.
which
Right,
was
during-
consistent with the
yeah,
ordinance?
At each entry or each point of ingress, egress, each doorway.
Does the sign light still work?
It's the bulbs are probably burned out, but I mean, I haven't fired it up, but yeah, it is, there's still electrical running to it. But it will.
Okay, landscaping, emergency vehicle. Parking will stay the way it is. Health, safety, okay. Covered my questions. Other things? Bill, Denise?
Covered my question too.
I have a question, going back to I think he may have answered it already, but you mentioned that you're shifting the restaurant capacity to seating down to 12, and that's based on the current septic, correct?
Correct.
And so you do or don't have a health department septic permit based on that?
They have to do final review on that. I believe my engineer would know a little bit better, but the information that is on this plan has been provided by the health department as far as sizes, capacity, square footage,
Gotcha.
things like that. It was approved at one time. I guess it has to maybe be reapproved.
Because, I mean, that would be another condition of approval.
Yeah,
Our approvals do not supersede health department department,
no, of course
ODOT,
not.
things like that, but just.
Yes, I
clarify.
think that would, just to be clear, that's where I was before. I think the health department, MDOT, the fire department, and
So at the bottom of page 13 of my staff report, or it's 7 of 32 of the packet, 17, I'm sorry, of 32 in the packet, I had outside agency permits required prior to the land use permit, and then the variance received or the roof removed, and then add on the deck comment. So outside agency to me is all of those, fire included, even though they're a township agency, but MDOT, soil erosion, health department, all of that.
So what are you saying?
You need to obtain your permits from the outside
Well, I can't obtain my
agencies
permits without,
prior to land use permit. So it's after this approval, but before I issue you a permit to get your building permit.
well, yeah, that's my goal is to be able to get my building permits
Right.
to modify.
Yeah. And our zoning ordinance requires those permits before I can issue your land use permit anyways. So even if it's not a condition of approval, but just to be clear in their approval is that those agency permits are still required.
Well, I thought when we were talking, because I was talking to Dave, my engineer, the three of us were kind of in conversation with this. The approval would be conditioned upon, the health department signing off on that before issuance of the C of O.
No, I haven't ever discussed any permits before C of O. Our ordinance requires all the outside agency permits prior to land use permit.
Well, again, so so theoretically, if the health department closes down or their building burns down or something, then I'm at their mercy before I get their approval. So you won't issue a land permit, so I can't get a building permit until, and I haven't even heard back from them in a month.
If the health department burns down, we can have a conversation about if you need to get your permit first.
But it's a hypothetical. It's
Right.
now I'm at the mercy of, whatever the health department wants to do. So I can, if there's an item related to the septic, let's say, I can still be working on the inside of the building, doing electrical and doing some framing and doing some plumbing, which isn't that big of a deal. But now I can't even do that because I'm waiting to hear from the health department and we're doing these other things. So construction usually doesn't happen that way. Things happen concurrently. So I'm trying to work with you so we can do things concurrently. If I don't have a C of O, it doesn't matter. You still have, that protection or that leverage on me. But I need to be able to start remodeling the inside.
The Antrim County Building Department will not issue a building permit until they have a health department permit documented on their application. They will issue a permit based on our approval tonight without the land use in hand, because there's a box you can check that says, was it approved, date and time, and it's up to them if they want to call Sarah and double check. But they will not even go through plan review for any work on the site until all applicable zoning, health department, et cetera, permits are obtained. That's part of their plan review paperwork that you
Part
fill
of
out
whose plan review?
for the Antrim County Building Department.
Right.
They won't sit down to even look at the scope of work until those permits are issued and approved. I feel your frustration with the health department. I deal with it a lot, but your plans will sit in limbo over there until the health department permit and subsequent approvals. Until they have it all, then they'll look at it and issue a permit.
Well, then the approval is the land use and the septic.
Correct. Yep, but you will have to have that before they'll issue you a building permit.
it'll be a bit of free friendly advice there, right? Unfortunately, we can't tell the county what to
I deal
do.
with that all the time.
Yeah.
Do we want to take a
Okay.
run at a motion?
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Lockery? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any further consideration of the commission before we get to motions, comments, concerns, things we want to? I mean, I think there are a lot of conditions that we need to apply if we're moving toward an approval.
I don't think there's a lot, but.
Yeah, well, yes. So want to get them right, I guess, is what I was thinking more.
Right.
Not that it's a lot. Okay. Sounds like you got it teed up.
I would make the motion to approve the site plan dated 5/12/26 on the following conditions. The zoning administrator will review the deck plans prior to those going in and any necessary landscaping per our landscaping ordinance. And the second condition would be that the front entranceway, whether it be through ZBA approval or removal, whatever needs to happen there. Then my motion is just that, to go ahead and approve it.
I think,
Give the zoning administrator.
we would need a third one subject to the health, MDOT,
Yeah,
soil and fire.
all
Agency
other
permits.
Yeah.
agencies, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So three conditions.
Do we want a time frame on the front porch?
No, because we're giving him the approval condition. That's a condition. He's got to overcome that condition. And then he's got to overcome, when he can go ahead with the decks if doesn't need to come back to us.
Right, yeah, require a site, yeah.
Right, if the
Amendment
zoning
to the-
administrator is happy with the deck and landscape plan pertinent to that.
Okay,
I have two comments, can I? One is in regards to MDOT. You talk about MDOT approval, quote unquote. Well, they're not gonna, I don't know what they're gonna issue approval of. Do you have clarification on that? Are we talking about the road coming out prior? Is that what you're talking about, approval?
I personally, in my motion, was not concerned with MDOT's final ruling of the road coming out or not. To me, when it comes back to Sarah, to say whether or not that's a landscaping plan issue, I believe. If you get into having to do earthwork of that size, then it falls back onto our landscaping ordinance, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just trying to deal with the building at hand as you have requested so that you can begin construction inside.
Correct.
And perhaps,
But I still can't, and
perhaps for that one, and because I'm the one that mentioned the MDOT, maybe it's subject to the health, soil, and fire approvals and satisfactory requirements met for MDOT, because the
Yeah.
requirements are part of the ordinance, and so Sarah can check that, but it's not an approval, it's a verification of requirements are met.
Right. I mean, I've had MDOT write me emails that say this isn't a change of use and we're not doing anything with it. Same with soil erosion. We're not going to issue a permit because we don't need to for whatever reason.
Right.
So,
but what if in their opinion it is quote unquote a change of use and they don't want to issue approval, then it gets hung up with MDOT, because, they
again,
want-
that's beyond our control.
They want-
We're, all we've got is a site plan here before us. and-
Well, you-
But it's subject to, I mean, these are requirements in the ordinance and also by,
No, I
according,
understand
by
that.
the
I'm just
county.
trying to be clear so we're all on the same page. So I know what I can need to do to check a box, because if I, take out the road, then it creates another problem. But if I leave the road in, or if I don't get MDOT approval, say everything is taken care of, but I don't have MDOT approval, I don't know what MDOT approval is. So I'm trying to clarify.
Again, this is what I said before. I was reading your engineer's letter and their representation is MDOT said, we don't care. Sorry, I shouldn't be so glib. That they don't have any interest in this project and they will have future review of the larger site plan changes. That, I think I can read the
I think
exact.
the
words.
township determines whether or not the land use is changed.
Well, it is a change of use because we're adding the hotel there. So from a
Okay.
township perspective, it is a change of use. MDOT has a different criteria, you know, if it's residential or commercial or satisfactory to them.
Yes.
Just like the health department has those same things too, so.
Not according to the ordinance, is it a change of use, because the primary use is still existing and it's 60% of the use. The hotel rooms are an accessory use. So according to the Torch Lake Township ordinance, it's not a change of use. So that's why, but MDOT may or may not, they're not going to really be concerned with what's in our ordinance. They're going to be concerned with whether they want that driveway. So then there's kind of like the standoff. That's what I'm trying to avoid. So it's complicated when we have these, you know, conditions that the plan is approved, but based on something that I have no control over with MDOT, or, you know, the timing aspect of the health department.
So, okay, I don't build things. So Antrim County isn't gonna give the building permit until they have all the things that they want. Do we have to care about those things then? Do we
Yeah,
have to
our
even
ordinance,
include them?
our ordinance says that the applicant shall furnish permits and approvals of all applicable agencies before issuance of a permit. That's in our ordinance.
Applicable agencies?
Right.
Yes.
And so that's where we don't know what their ordinance says, if it is a change of use or not. And so the township's not going to say, oh, you don't need an MDOT permit because,
Right.
you know, we don't enforce the rules. We don't even know what the rules are. So that's where it goes back to that agency to tell us.
To what agency?
Like MDOT, for example.
MDOT or the health department or DNR or whoever. I mean,
Right.
that's
And
why
then-
we say required permit, all required permits need to be in place.
Right.
That's a condition to the site approval. We can't tell them what to do. So if they decide they want you to change that entrance, we can't tell you differently. That's all we can do
Right.
is tell you
No,
if
I
your site
understand that,
plan
and I-
meets our ordinance
And
requirements.
I've agreed to modify that entrance at the appropriate time. But if I remove it now, then it may open up another can of worms in regards to landscaping or things like that, which I didn't want to complicate the issue that is before us tonight.
Well, and that's the issue. You're claiming that MDOT, I guess I don't know why we're continuing because you've already said MDOT says it's okay the way that it
Right.
is. I just want MDOT to put that in writing because they're the agency that's doing it. So, but
Well-
if MDOT wanted you to move that entrance or the health department wanted you to locate your septic somewhere else on the property, that would change your site plan, which brings you back to this board to get approval because it impacts the site plan that's been approved. So that's why we require the agency approvals, and we like to have their reviews prior to approval so that we know that the site plan's not going to change. Our ordinance requires they cannot put it as a condition of approval, and you're going to come into the office, I'm going to tell you, the ordinance requires you to have these permits or approvals before I can issue you a permit.
Well, then I don't understand why we've met for 4 months in a row. If MDOT just says we want, this driveway removed,
But you're saying that they don't. Your engineer is saying that they're not requiring you to remove it. I don't know why we're continuing to go
No, they
on
would-
to discuss this driveway that you're saying you can continue to keep for what you want to do there. So did they not say that?
Yeah,
Is that
based-
the issue?
based on the ordinance.
It's not based on my ordinance. It's got to be based on their ordinance and their rules. They're not enforcing our ordinance just like we don't enforce theirs.
Yeah, I don't know
So-
if MDOT has an ordinance, but,
Okay, can we move on here? I'm sorry, we can have this discussion after, but I think we were in the middle of a motion trying to get this Get this moving along. Okay,
Okay, so we
So we-
have 3 criteria.
right.
Are those first two as you stated it in the packet? Kind of vague, and then adding the third. Is that
Mr. Peterson, could you restate your motion?
Yes, my motion is to approve the site plan dated 5/12 with the exception of the decks on the following conditions. Number one, outside agency permits are required prior to land use permit being issued. Number two, a variance or a settlement of the existing violation of the front porch is resolved. And number three is that the zoning administrator, should the decks want to be considered, is in charge of reviewing the deck plan and subsequent landscaping plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I can't repeat it.
Right, understood.
Watch it on YouTube.
Yeah. Discussion. Hesitations?
Can we clarify the variance? Do you want to do it before land use permit, or do you just want it done before occupancy? For the roof?
Right. That's what I was saying. Do we want to put a time frame? Is it just prior to occupancy? Are you okay with that? That would be the longest possible.
I think as long as it's done prior to occupancy, again, my intent here is not to hold this process up any longer. It's just to put a path forward into a motion so that things can progress.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
So we'll add that as part of the condition that it has to be resolved prior to occupancy.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Shall we have a vote then? Voice vote? Or I'm sorry, a roll call vote,
Yeah,
please?
aye. Yes, I approve, yes, I agree.
Okay, I think that's you.
You gotta call them
Oh,
off.
I gotta call
You're
them
gonna
off?
do
You
the
got to
roll
call
call.
them off.
All right, okay. What say you?
Approved.
Approve.
Approve.
Approved.
Great.
All right, unanimously approved. Thank you for your patience. With the conditions in place, and we'll hear back from our administrator at future meetings on the progress. Okay. One matter down. On to master plan review.
So at last month's meeting, we talked a little bit about future land use and implementation, and I put these in your packet probably backwards because I think a lot of our discussion tonight will be on the future land use map and those future land use categories, because you wanted to make some changes to the map to see it better. And so my GIS technician took, and instead of making the environmentally sensitive area an overlay that was hatched, he took and made those whole parcels green to show you where they were. And there's some smaller maps in there too, so you can see each individual layer, what's causing it to be environmentally sensitive, if it's the wetlands or erosion areas. He broke those all out so you could see that different information related to that. And what we were talking about with those environmentally sensitive areas is that basically saying your parcel is an environmentally sensitive area, and if you want to build not an environmentally sensitive area in that area, you can go ahead. But if you end up building in that sensitive area, then you may have some additional requirements that you need to comply with for that. So looking at that future land use map with the change in it, are you liking what this is representing?
I personally do. I think it's much more clear and concise,
I didn't
especially
write it.
since the fact it's on the parcel lines. It's not partially in a corner.
Yeah. Right, so it is by parcel, right? And
Correct.
that's what the note says. If it has more than 50% environmentally sensitive, then,
Right.
okay.
I guess, okay, so maybe I'm missing, so I can look at that and I can see the environmentally sensitive lots, parcels. But then I can't look at the same map and see what is it commercial, is it residential?
Well, if it's environmentally sensitive, that's the district as a whole. Like before, when it was hatched, it was overlays, so you still had
Oh, so
commercial.
This isn't overlaid.
This is just environmentally
Okay.
sensitive.
Okay.
Right, yeah. So we took away that overlay.
So really on the future land use map, the environmentally sensitive, which is the dark green for those of us looking at it, there's no building on those.
There is building allowed as long as you're not impacting the sensitive feature.
Would that require them to come and ask for permission?
We haven't gone that far. So because this is the master plan, and so we'd have to go, when we get into the zoning ordinance and we talk about the zoning district, the planning commission would have to say, okay, your future land use is environmentally sensitive. How are we going to bring that regulation into our zoning ordinance? And I think that would be the discussion that you'd have at that time at the zoning, and say, do we have a process? If somebody wants to build a house on one of these, do they come to the planning commission? Do they go to the ZBA? Who reviews it? And maybe it's still the zoning administrator that does a house plan, but you need to have a survey done instead of just a napkin sketch to verify where these things are. I think that was something, Bill, didn't you mention something like that?
Yeah, and my other thing to build on that is that if we were to approve the future land use map with the environmentally sensitive category, would those environmentally sensitive property tax ID numbers be flagged in our system? Or would it be up to the zoning administrator to just say, oh, let me make sure it's not one of these environmentally sensitive? Because I know it is with high risk erosion and critical dunes, but we're kind of adding, so to speak, an environmentally sensitive category. So would that automatically flag it when I come into the office and say, here's the property tax ID number?
It would depend on our zoning language. We're gonna have to update the zoning ordinance to help get it into enforcement world. So the zoning ordinance right now has a 50-foot setback from any wetlands, lakes, or streams. It doesn't talk about critical dunes or high-risk erosion. That's regulated by the state or permitted by the state. But what we found is that, the online maps at the state level, just like the wetland maps at the state level, they're done at the state level. So you really need a local person to come and look at it. And that's where the survey, I think, helps you get into that to make sure that everything is outside of that during construction. But initially, it would just be flagged probably that says your future land use has environmentally sensitive. Hey, zoning administrator, pay attention to what's going on. And two, we had the zoning map updated and the process updated for that, to say exactly what you would have to do and provide. So the ordinance right now says I can request a survey if needed. And that's what, in talking to Eagle and the wetlands, they've advised me, not advised, that might be too strong. In my conversations with them is that our wetland maps give you an idea of where it is, but aren't 100% accurate. So you should request some sort of a survey or a wetland delineation when you're issuing permits.
It's interesting to that point because on one hand, and I think in our last discussion, I remember we were talking about some mechanism to flag. So an applicant could come in and, oh, I got a problem here. It's in the critical dunes or whatever. And that's great. I like that conceptually. But if I step back for a second and think about it, I'm not sure we want to be in the position of somebody relying on us to tell them whether or not they're in one of those sensitive areas. You just described that the wetland maps aren't very accurate. And I just want to be careful we don't incur any liability by, if we ever fail to do that, if we say we're going to do it and then we fail to do it, now are we on the hook because we didn't tell them to go check with Eagle or something? It's almost like if you live in our deal, it's up to you, the applicant, to check in each one of those. I'm proposing that just as a consideration instead of trying to us be the ones to determine whether or not.
So
We
as
should.
it stands in our ordinance right now, if I come in for a permit on high-risk erosion land, do you issue the land use permit prior to any DEQ permit or anything, or do you wait until that has been approved and then issue the land use?
We would wait for Eagle if we know that Eagle's needed. You know, it's one of those, kind of all the government agencies work together, right? When you're getting through to make sure that someone's not building in the wrong spot. So we did have one where we issued a land use permit, later come to find out it was in a high risk erosion area. I don't remember if they were actually building in the area or if they just had it on the property. But eventually Eagle caught up to it, you know, and did their review for their process on it. But I guess trying to get a person ahead of that. I get your part, Andy, of going, I don't think there's liability on the township, because if we're not responsible to make sure somebody gets their permit, but to say, hey, you may need a permit, make sure to check before.
Yeah, I
you get
guess
to
that
the end
wasn't
of this
clear. Is your
process.
concern we don't want to police that, or we should be flagging it? Because I would think if we have the information, we should be flagging it. To Bill's point,
That's how I found out sometimes, is I went to get a land use permit and they said, you come back with DEQ saying you can do that, then
Conceptually, 100% in agreement. I was asking the question only just because in just the last few minutes, I was thinking about that. Do we incur any risk by suggesting that we are going to police that, even though technically we're not obligated to? And Sarah makes me feel better that, you know, that it's not our responsibility ultimately. As long as we're comfortable with that, I'm good. I like the idea of informing people as much as possible, so.
right, if we have a flag on the property
the tax ID number.
tax ID number or whatever, and somebody comes in with a building, looking for a building, if it's more than 50% environmentally sensitive, it's going to raise a flag, and then we need to think about what our enforcement mechanism, how we're going to
Mhm.
So
approve
if we
that.
were gonna go with this route, then we would have to put the procedures in place in the ordinance, correct?
Right, I bet you'd have to get to the ordinance, and something that we can do is we can, we kind of already have the beginning of it, but we can create an interactive zoning map too that you can put online, so then people could search themselves and see if what zone it's in and what they need to do. And my GIS guys put on, so when you click on the parcel, it gives you even the sections of the ordinance and things you may need, like additional notes based on what your zoning is or what district you're in. So that could help out too in the process to inform the public before they even get to me. So they're not coming in and doing a land use permit and then me catching them and going, oh, you need to make sure you do this. Even before that, having those conversations and getting those letters and approvals.
Because most of the time, when somebody just bought
Right.
property and the realtor told them they can do whatever. Oh, yeah, short-term rent
Yeah,
it.
one of those just came to
Z.
ZBA this winter, and that was
You know.
exactly
That sort of thing.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds helpful even without this. It sounds
Yeah.
like something in relation.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so I think we're in agreement. We like the new environmentally sensitive
okay.
district, is that?
Yep.
I'm
Can I ask
still
a
confused
question?
what that industrial use is up at the top of the very north end of the district.
The high-risk erosion area, is it just that little part? Is it just a really tiny little spot that's not showing up on the map?
It's kind of hard to see. There's a couple of blue patches that run along the shore along East Bay.
Okay.
Yeah, it is really,
It's
really
a case in
tight.
point, because I was almost ready to celebrate that it wasn't in there, but I thought I was this whole time, but I think I still am.
I can show you afterwards.
Is it those little hash marks there?
Yeah, the hash marks have it. Yeah, you're in Farna.
Oh, I see. Ooh, yeah. Bad news for you, Randy.
Yeah, I don't know that I like it personally. I think,
Talk to
I
the
think
state.
that we should, yes, protect our environment and all that jazz. I don't know. I guess it depends on what we do with it, I guess. I think it's good to point it out, what
Mhm.
we're gonna do about it. How far are we going?
Well, and that's the thing. So what are we going to do about it is the conversation at the zoning level that you're going to have in the future. So here, and maybe you don't do anything, right? Maybe the planning commission and township board says it's on the future land use. We know that it is here. we're only going to take it into consideration maybe for large developments that want to fill all the wetlands on that property, or something like that, commercial projects versus individual single-family dwellings. But that will be a conversation we'll have at, the
Yeah, I
zoning
mean, I
board.
don't know about the erosion areas, but the critical dunes and the wetlands, somebody's not going to be allowed to build in those.
Mhm.
We can say whatever we want, and that's up to Eagle. That's not.
Right.
And maybe it's just as simple on this map with the critical dunes and high-risk erosion is rather than try to have a magnifying glass and squint, maybe we can exclude the better portion of the map and make it bigger,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
put the road name on it or whatever, just so people, oh, yeah, well, okay, it only pertains to, this stretch of road, these parcels.
Yeah, we can zoom in some on it. He was trying to provide, he's always trying to, you got to edit him. He's like, here's all the information. And I'm like, we can't give us bite-sized pieces. So to try to help with that.
Do we even have the ability to put any of that stuff up online where someone could search it?
Yeah, we could do some of the maps because each of one of these could be bigger maps. And then when you're online and you can zoom in, it definitely is a lot easier to see. on the-
Again, would give somebody a flag at least if
Yeah.
they had one of those pieces of property that they
Mhm.
need to look into it.
And then, yeah, we drafted the language for the future land use sections. So those start on page, 28 of 32 of the packet are the future land use designations. So in the ag district, we talked about, low density residential, farming, agricultural activities. Kind of the last couple of sentences were what we discussed at the last meeting, where it says agricultural uses should be included in this district to allow for farmers to retail directly to consumers. And this should be for all agricultural properties, not just along US 31. And so we were trying to, which has not been updated on the future land use, but trying to resolve those one red dots along 31 that's at a corner that has an ag use on it. Like Kings and those, just say those types of uses are allowed in the ag district instead of having to be in the commercial district. For that, and then I did.
So I'm sorry, that'll require an update also
Correct.
to
into
the
the
zoning ordinance, but this is just expressing the intent
Right,
that
so,
we're going to allow farm markets on any farm.
yeah, and there's some in the, so I want to get confirmation that I heard you right on what you wanted to do for that district. We'll update the future land use map, and then we'll need to, in the implementation, so on page 21 of 32, it's one of the highlighted sections, review the zoning ordinance to further support agricultural uses where appropriate, designate limited commercial uses as uses in the agricultural district. So that's kind of your task to help bring that future land use map forward into zoning for you. I left the density in that district to 2 acres per dwelling unit, or one house on 2
And
acres.
that was a question I had, because I know we briefly touched on that, but if I'm correct, in the master plan, there was also talk of, room for growth. And other communities struggle with workforce housing. Where in this would we allow something of more density than 2 acres as it pertains to our zones? At least the possibility, or where we would like to see it in a zone, should someone come with that approach. Because from an 80 acre parcel standpoint, if somebody wanted to do workforce housing or duplex or whatever the case is, personally, I would rather have 4 units on 2 acres than take up 8 acres of the 80 acres if all the rest of it was going to stay as preserving the rural character, ag, so to speak,
Right.
open.
Increased density rather than,
Right, where in these zones would we as a board want to see the increased density? If we even want to allow it.
wasn't that?
Was that one of our goals? That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for as well.
review zoning ordinance to encourage cluster development or open space conservation projects.
Yeah, we didn't really have an increased density kind of goal except for, and that's how I wrote the future land use sections, is kind of to go along with what we already have, except for maybe in the village, it's a little bit more aggressive, but the village does have limited land. And so if you're looking at these larger and by larger, not out of control, but larger developments, the village is going to be a hard location. So the planning commission, township board needs to decide if you want to go forward with the status quo, or if you want to add some density allowed. And we could add some language to that where your either minimum overall lot size of the development, or you get increased density if you almost like purchase of development rights. So you're taking them from the rest of the 80 and you're giving it to something smaller and guaranteeing that you'd never develop the other portion.
Right.
As an option. It can get a little complicated long-term, but there are ways to go about that. And we have open space development in the zoning ordinance, so that's where you preserve 50% of the open space. But I don't remember that if it gives you any additional density bonuses for doing that. But I guess at a basic level, where would you want to see a denser development for something within the township, and then we can go and figure out how to do it that makes sense.
A question that I've had is, I know there's a need for affordable housing, definitely, but in this particular township, what evidence do we have that there's a need for a dense or smaller, whatever, however we're defining it? Our statistics are that we're majority senior. And I guess I would like more evidence that people are wanting to move here with their starter home, young family.
I think if you just open the doors, people will be like, okay, I'll live there, because there's just no options.
Well,
I
I
don't
don't think
know.
it's so much
I don't know.
to your point, but as a business owner in a township, myself and others struggle with getting workers. Most of the time, your workers are the younger family generational type people. And when you're asking them every day to commute from Rapid City, Kalkaska, some people are now looking as far north as
Okay.
from Cadillac and whatnot. And when you start talking about $5 a gallon, and they're out there, there are people out there that want to work, there's jobs here, there's a need for services in the community. And I see, for the 25 years I've had a business here, it's getting tougher and tougher to find able-bodied younger people to work because they can't afford to live here.
Yeah, yes, if they want to move
Okay.
out, they've got to leave.
Okay.
And I don't think we're the only community struggling with it. I think you'll see it in Milton, you'll see it in Elk Rapids Township. It's all the way through. Traverse City, it's how do they handle it? Where do they manage it? Where do they put it? Where's an allowable thing? And agriculture is a big part of our township. And with fruit price and whether or not they even have crops and so on, it's getting harder and harder for these people to retain their
Right.
open space. And I'm just looking at it as, is that the avenue that maybe, hey, if they can lose 4 acres in a corner of unproductive orchard for workforce or affordable housing, and it lets them keep the family farm, if that's the goal of the master plan, then I think it's up to us to give the avenue to explore that as a possibility to retain that, rather than sell that 100-acre farm off in 5 20-acre parcels.
Right, right. And you are, and I understood that you were speaking specifically about workforce housing, like connected to the land, right? Or
Right.
connected to the,
Right. If someone's
To the
willing,
use
if
of
someone
land.
wants to keep their open land open, but they've got to find a way. And if that means that, they can lose 4 acres or 5
Yeah.
acres or whatever that is to retain all the rest, then maybe we shouldn't handicap.
So we do have, and maybe we could adjust it a little bit, we do have this goal to look at greater density or how we're going to handle that. Would that be,
I think it falls in there. I'm just thinking as we're looking at the land use map,
Right.
we have to give a,
as opposed to sticking it in, like our agricultural zone or something right now? Because it sounds like we still have some things to talk about.
yeah, I'm not saying it has to be
Yeah.
done tonight. I'm just saying that I think
Okay.
it's part of the map.
How did like, if we head south here on 31 a ways, and there's some, like mobile homes right along the road there, and I know there's some, look like migrant workers that had worked there or lived there for a while. I don't know if somebody's there and still or not. But, I mean, how did that come to be? And
That's migrant housing, or
Yeah.
it's seasonal housing, farm housing. So
I think there's
those-
some north as well.
Yeah, those can't be used for permanent, well, they have to be used related to the farm, for a farm worker.
But what he's describing there is, that's obviously an extreme version of it, but just some aspect of it that I totally get what you're saying, because I hadn't thought about it so much on the agricultural side, but I was thinking about it like in terms of like EMS and support services. I mean, we do have, people come and if they're EMS, they spend the night here, but, fire people don't, at least currently. I know Williamsburg's just started to do that. And as we get more and more people nearing retirement, like myself, I want to make sure there's plenty of people around to take care of me. So I think that all those things factor in together, to your point. So we got to figure out a way to do that.
When I've seen some communities, you mentioning that makes me think of some communities that have in their ag district a smaller lot size allowed with an overall density, even at a land division level, which would make it more cost effective for somebody in the ag district. So they don't have to go through a full site plan and engineer it. They could potentially, split off a piece or two. And the thought initially in that community was for their family members, to be able to live nearby. But if you're also looking for other opportunities for housing, I don't know how it's worked long-term, because kind of with the deed restrictions, you got to trace that back to see if they split off properties, what the original parcel looked like related to the density. So I think in one of the communities, they had it was like a maximum of a half an acre or an acre, but like the minimum overall was 10 acres. Somehow like there was like this space that you have to split at least 10 acres, or if you want to go smaller, it has to be a half an acre, and it takes away from your density of the rest of it somehow to keep it open as an option to allow some smaller parcels and maintain agricultural property.
Well, is that something like for the either next meeting or a future meeting that you could research that and verify that's the construct of it?
Yeah, I could take a look, and then maybe that becomes an action item. The action
Right.
item is, reviewing the zoning ordinance to determine if reduced lot size, at a loss of words.
well,
what
yeah,
you
I was
wanna
thinking
do,
maybe
but-
with our development, we could encourage cluster developments, we could put a nod to agricultural land in there as well. That will examine opportunities to,
Yeah, the first one and that one, I was thinking we kind of need that workshop to talk about where we want the density, because that seems like a huge petite topic.
exactly.
I think it'd be nice, though, for the planning commission to say, we think the density should be here. What do you think? Like, to provide the feedback versus having the map blank and say, where would you like to see more people? Or we can have a couple of versions that says, is that the feel like, okay, ag district, we want to increase density here, or only along 31, or only not along 31. And I guess we could go through something like that.
I like starting a conversation with a few options.
Yeah.
Because the other density options are really the communities, right? And
Right.
there's as you pointed out, there's not a lot of land there to even work with.
Right. So then it is status quo, essentially, right? There's
Right, you
not,
can say you want to increase it, but
right,
how often do houses get built?
right. So you'd look at converting properties from a single family to a quad or something, but the houses that are existing in the village, current villages are not really, not to say you couldn't do it, but it's not like they're old, big historic homes that can be divided easily. They're just smaller homes. You might get a duplex out of something with a basement and the main level, but it's kind of saying we want density, but not really.
Right, but you're not
doing
going to have
it.
somebody tearing down houses and putting up a 4-unit.
Right.
in the
And there's
middle
not a lot of vacant lots to do that on
No.
within that district
No.
either. So, okay. I'll look into, for you, Andy, though, that language and see, and we can continue the conversation as maybe an option or something to look at, how other places are working in their ag districts. I haven't seen it work well anywhere, honestly. It's a topic everybody talks about and wants to do something and provide, but how it happens is really difficult.
I feel like the last time we touched on that, I'm trying to remember where exactly it was in the zoning ordinance, but the last time we touched on worker housing, I feel like we did a good job with what we put in there.
Yeah, it feels like it's seeding your community with younger people, right? Bring people in, and
Make it easier to.
but then
be a
something
farmer.
goes wrong, and
And the hard part for a township level is it's really difficult for us. We don't have the laws at the state level that say or provide us good guidance on like workforce housing. We're just approving housing in general. If you want to do a good, think it's a good deed to provide workforce housing as your option, that's on you versus saying if you build 5 units, one has to be workforce housing. The township doesn't have a ton of teeth to be able to make that happen unless you go through like a PUD process or something like that. But when you're looking at farmers and doing developments, they're likely not going to go through a PUD process because that's not what they specialize in, right? They specialize in something else and they're looking for a fairly cost-effective, easier way to get through. So again, that's trying to get something done, but it's really looking at a developer and not the current property owner to help you.
okay. So we looked at the maps and we looked at the districts.
Did anybody see anything in the district descriptions that surprised you and we're not done with these, we'll come back to them again, but if there were anything just at your first glance that you didn't like or did like?
I noted, like Bill, I noted the densities here, particularly agricultural timber. I don't know, I don't have a particular thought in mind about it, just
And
those
those
are somewhat random, right?
They are mirrored by your current zoning ordinance in those current districts. So in the ag district, we currently have a 2-acre minimum, and in the timber district, we currently have a 5-acre minimum. And so just kind of moving forward with not changing the density, I threw a number in there, see what you thought about it.
Yeah, okay.
But definitely open to change those. if
But
you're
again, we'll
interested.
have another look at it. I seem to remember when we went through this before, the numbers were there and we didn't have a reason to change them. 'Cause
Right.
change is equally random. The recreation district, we say maintaining and creating recreation.
That is new.
Yes.
I mean, we don't have a zoning district that mirrors that. So that would be a district we'd have to create if we wanted to add that in. But it does acknowledge a large land use property, large acreage size that's in our,
Right. And the, what do we call it now on the bay there in the village? The Torch Bay, yeah,
Nature preserve, yeah.
yes. I don't see that on here.
oh, that's not. No, it is.
Is it? Okay.
It is, oh, this map isn't gonna help. It's when you look at Torch Lake Village,
Yes.
and then you look to the west, it looks like a lake, but there's a blue parcel right there, right up next to the bay. Grand Traverse Bay. It's hard to
Okay.
see, it's blurry. It is on there. The nature preserve is designated.
Okay. I couldn't make that out, so I'll take your word for it. Right, so, but increasing recreation or,
Oh, actually, I take that back. That was in the map in the chapter. The big map that's at the end, it must have wetlands and that on it. So it got kicked into that environmentally sensitive area instead of recreation. We could pull that property back out and call it recreation instead.
we only have one other one in the township, right? So,
Are you talking about the nature preserve?
Yeah, the map that's in the chapter with that language has it as blue, but on the big map that we just changed to, it took it out and made it natural or environmentally sensitive. Because that map in the chapter, I didn't swap out in case you didn't make the
I got
change.
you. Okay. I think we got to keep it in listed as recreation because we
Yeah.
listed as a recreation spot. Or we have to change in the recreation spot itself, where it's listed.
and the day park also.
Yep, we can do that. Okay.
Anyway, should there be do we have a goal on recreation planning?
We don't in the master plan, because the park and rec plan is separate from the master plan for like recreation planning.
So that's
So it's really,
continuing to pursue the recreation plan is our,
Say that again, and I was deep in thought reading something. I lost you.
we have in the land use about maintaining and increasing recreation land, but we don't have a goal or an action item on that. But Sarah was pointing out we have a pending recreation plan, which would seem to respond to that goal.
so we could add about continuing to support a park and rec plan or a 5-year park and rec plan or something like that, so that it can pursue recreational activities as per that plan.
Otherwise, it felt like that was just kind of hanging out there.
Yeah, the only concern I have about that is that the reason we went down the park and rec plan in the first place was so we could apply for grants. If we didn't need it to apply for grants, I'm not sure we ever would have necessarily carved one out.
Right.
So part of me just feels like the planning commission should list its specific things it would like to do as far as parks and recreation are concerned. Because it felt like the parks and rec plan was starting to take a life of its own. I don't know if others have a view on that one way or the other.
The goals, but in our action plan, we do have to identify non-motorized activity. Am I off base here with what we're talking about? But
No, just
I think
like the
that's-
recreation, maintaining and creating recreational spaces. I thought it was a little broader than just non-motorized
Okay,
trails. I read that as trails, I guess. Maybe I'm
okay.
just trying to be more inclusive. Okay, well, topic for a future discussion anyway, right? Those were the only thoughts I had. Anybody?
Any other feedback?
Well, just to close up, one way or another, to try to close up the discussion on the Parks and Rec plan. So it's not listed in the action items now. I don't see anything about parks unless I'm totally reading past it here.
There's just the non-motorized, kind of the number
Okay.
6 box down.
Okay, there it is.
But that's not, it says non-motorized, where we could expand that to talk about other recreational opportunities besides non-motorized. That's what I was thinking after you mentioned that, Jeff.
That's why I sort of read that as trails, but I'm thinking recreation or the recreation plan is maybe broader than that. How do we?
Yeah.
And how do we expand our recreation?
Right.
Well, I do think we need to put some sentence in there about that because it's not clear and there's been so much discussion.
Yeah, we can add something in there.
Okay. Anything else for?
On the one below, the one that I asked at the last time, I kind of got the impression does anybody remember from the little survey, on-site survey that we did with the township people? Was there other people that wanted to see the road ends made accessible, or was that I'm not gonna push it if I'm the only one that wanted that. Does anyone remember? I think I'd have to probably pull that up.
I support looking into those and having them accessible to our citizens.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure. It wasn't just
Yeah.
me. After the meeting, I kind of got discouraged.
It seemed like we had some momentum to do it, and then I don't know if.
Well, yeah,
A year or two ago, and it
I think there's somewhat of a practical problem that people have to trespass on private property to access the road ends.
Now,
And
it's the county road right of way ends, and then the road and the township,
the county owns it, but the county doesn't want to, yeah. They say, the township, you can do what you want with them. But you can't park there, because you can't park in the road and you can't park in the grass.
You can park there as long as it's not paved.
Yeah.
Because the county rules state that you just can't park your tires on county asphalt. So there are quite a few of our road ends that turn to dirt before our actual portion that we control of the county road end. And those could be parked on, or they could park on the side of the county road as long as they park off to the side of the asphalt. But
Or you could walk.
they're, right, they're technically not trespassing to get to our road ends.
I know Bob has some concerns about it and also
I
the
think-
cost of maintenance.
Yeah, I think he had concerns over the cost and the ability to, because of the county, I don't know if the county actually has jurisdiction over them or if how that works. I'd have to look back into that, but there were issues around even our ability to actually take control of it, even if we wanted to. So that was a concern. I know it was something that came up at the board several times.
Right. My understanding, but I can't quote a source, is that the county owns it, but they're happy to cede control to the township. But then the township becomes responsible to maintain and police it. And that's where the potential costs come.
I would agree, but I don't have the documentation either.
Yeah.
I'd have to find it.
So,
In the survey, we had a question, oh, I just lost it, about what natural, let me see, what recreational, how often do you use the following township recreational assets? And so we had road ends, and it says 8% is often, 19% is occasionally, and then 20% is rarely, and 51% is never for road ends. Was the question we had in the survey. I don't know if that's what you were thinking
Yeah, I
of.
was just imagine the boards that we had up that people put stuff on.
Mhm.
Didn't know if there was other input on that or if it's just me and a couple other people. I don't want us to waste, if it's something that is never going to go anywhere, then the township should not waste their time on it. I can definitely think of other things that would be.
I guess I'll say this, maybe we should bottom it out and get the answer and decide what we're going to do.
And I think part of it too is, I know we're wrestling a little bit with trying to get funding and support for, obviously we got the day park, got the nature preserve. Then there are some road ends that have influence on the township. For instance, down, I can't remember the name of the road, but where the fire trucks go in. So that's an area where they put bricks or something out there so the fire trucks get down there and refinish their pumpers or replenish their pumpers. So there's a few of them around, but I think it would have to be, we'd have to take another look at it. But I think that the focus was trying to just get control and get good support on the stuff we know for sure we got to maintain.
Well,
Okay.
and we're going to get feedback on this action plan at the open house as well. So we can ask for feedback specific to this and see what happens. If the rest of the planning commission isn't opposed to doing that.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Okay. Anything else? Should we close discussion on this for tonight?
So I'll bring future land use back to you next month again, just with some changes and kind of, hopefully it'll be, well, it doesn't have to be, but a short, just, yep, a nod to it. And then we'll use that for feedback for the open house once you've had a chance to take a look at that.
And we're targeting September again for an open house.
Yeah, and so what I'll do is I will send you an email with some dates in it that maybe we can get a couple of you to attend at least, and then we'll go through getting that scheduled and announcing it and all of that. And talking with Bob about that as well, he wants to get some additional feedback on the park and rec plan. So the board hasn't adopted the park and rec plan yet. Get some additional feedback on that before sending that back to the board with whatever questions are related to recreation, that just using that as another opportunity.
Good. All right. Look forward to it. Moving on. Reports. Sarah, any additional administration?
I don't think so.
Okay. ZBA, nothing to report. Andy, anything for the good of the order from the board?
I think two items that are going to be likely discussed tomorrow at the board meeting is Parks and Rec Fund itself and a millage for Parks and Rec Fund, not necessarily for the plan because we haven't adopted a plan yet, but a fund that was proposed to be put on the ballot for a millage. There will be some discussion around that. And then there's also, there's been a little more buzz lately around short-term rentals, probably because of the time of the year, but also because there was some, I guess, survey work, for lack of a better expression, that showed that there were some scans out there. There's some technologies that you can use that scan the township and look and see what properties are actually being listed as short-term. And it's quite shocking how many there are, at least allegedly. So, I think the theory around that is that there's more of the activity going on than people might realize. So the question is going to be coming up as to what to do about it. Whatever that means, whether that means continue to try to find ways to enforce the current ordinance, which does not allow for short-term rentals, or whether the township should consider an alternative path for short-term rentals.
There's some money to be had there.
Well, and that's what we allow short-term rentals only in the village after special use permit. They're not licensed. They don't pay anything additional. And a lot of communities, have licensing ordinances if they do allow them. And I thought the board had talked about it a little bit, but you're going to talk about it again. If they should be allowed in other places potentially, or there's services that you have that monitor websites and will tell you where they are. It's a very time-intensive process to go through and try to verify when you look on Airbnb if it's in your township or not. And if you know the community well, you can look at some pictures of houses, but people are creative about not putting pictures of the outside of the house, only the inside of the house. And then, so some of these companies will go through, not the companies you contract with, and they review even realtor listings and compare the inside of the houses with the realtor listing picture. I'm sure they have AI do it, but somebody then visually confirms that that's the same place, and then they get an address to it so that you can do enforcement for it. Some of those monitoring services, they usually pay per listing, or the township pays per listing for them. But a lot of times they don't just use it for enforcement only. So you're using it when you collect licensing fee, and then the cost of that monitoring goes to the licensor
Licensing fee. Yeah.
instead of the township paying for it out of pocket. So that's, I think, where the township will have to decide if they want to not allow them, and it is a problem of short-term rentals, if they want to contract with some monitoring system to do that.
Seems like it would be worth looking at the licensing, just because seems to be more or less no ceiling.
I think
on how much
any
you
and,
charge.
any and all options are on the table.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any presupposed
No.
path at this point. I think we are starting to get more facts, though.
I think it's interesting though that you said you might be surprised how many are out there. Like I would be probably because I don't hear any complaints from anyone. So is
Yeah.
it really a problem?
It's a good question. It's a good question. I was just shocked when I saw, maybe it was you showed us, Sarah, there was some kind of a chart and it showed all these dots of rentals and I was like, whoa. I mean, all over. I was like really surprised to see that and I would have never guessed it.
And that's what we usually get, maybe a handful of complaints a year for somebody that, from their neighbor, impact or sometimes it sells and that's when it picks up and it starts something new versus someone that's done it for the last 20 years and just becomes the normal for it. A couple of them.
All right. Public comments. We don't have any slips, correct?
No slips, no slips.
All right. Seeing none. Concerns of the commission. I'm good. Land use maps are the fun stuff, so this was good. Anybody else have anything?
Nope.
Motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
8:42.
8:42.